Hey guys, this is Vince with Practical Performance. This is the first in a series of videos in which we will be installing the rear bar, the VinceBar, which is part of the VinceBar kit. So before I go any further, I just wanted to point out that this here is one of what I would call the standard VinceBar gusset cups. Sorry, they fit the sedan, the coupe, and the touring. The convertible, this is a convertible here. I love that green top, by the way. It has the bulkhead, so that makes it for a very specific situation right here. So these are the convertible specific front gusset cups, the right one and the left one. Now I'm just mentioning that because I wanted to point out that there are more parts in the VinceBar kit. Okay, so that said, there's a standard VinceBar, and then there's a touring specific VinceBar. The difference here is that recess, the cutout there, if you will. Now, the standard bar will fit all bodies, so the sedan, the coupe, the touring, as well as the convertible in this case, as we have here. The difference with a touring bar is that this recess here allows for the correct fitment of, so there's a little bit of a lid coming down like this. There are studs here and there on the touring, and it allows for those to sit correctly. Let's have a look at that in a few pictures. So the touring VinceBar is a little bit different. However, the installation of the VinceBars is identical. So what we will be doing is the VinceBar will be sitting in this position. Sorry about that. So in that position, roughly, but sunk down into this cavity under what I usually call the lid here. So the first thing, so I'll go through a few steps. We will be drilling from the underside to position that. We'll be cutting out the hole to sink it into its position. We will be flattening the upside down T's, some of you may know about, and doing some additional prep. Probably I'm going to do that in part one. Part two, we will do the actual install. Oh yeah, these are the this is the epoxy rivet version of the VinceBar. Both the VinceBar and the front gusset cups are available in either weld or epoxy rivet. I prefer the epoxy rivet method, which is why we're installing that. And speaking of which, this is one of the reasons why I avoid welding. So these are MIG welds from the underside. This whole thing is painted the same way. Same thickness and everything, but anywhere where you have welds, you have done a metallurgical the steel is altered, if I put it that way, so it's more prone to rust. Okay, so anyway, off camera, what I'll do is I need to remove this unit here. I will be covering up the sides, and then I'll check back in when we are ready to drill. One of the challenges doing the install of the VinceBar is space. You have to be sort of hanging into the trunk. Touring is obviously easier. The convertible is probably the most difficult. When we did the front gusset cups, I had the top down. That was very convenient. I put the top up now, so we can at least get this compartment out of the way, which does give us more room. Just wanted to mention that. So what I've done is I removed the unit. I covered with just with towels. We'll see how this works. We aren't going to be welding or anything like that, so I'm only concerned about, you know, dust and such. So that said, let's yeah. So the VinceBar will sit here. What we want to do in order to position it, let's see, best lighting situation. Want to drill through from the underneath through the rear subframe mount, and we will I think we will be protruding somewhere here. That allows us to place the VinceBar, and we can sort of trace where to cut. Now, on the underside of the car, I have prepared with the 10.5mm drill bit, which is part of the tooling kit, and as well as the M12 times 1.5 threading tap, also part of the tooling kit. And what we'll do is now drill through, so past the existing threads and into the undrilled and unthreaded part of the mounts, and up through that top surface. And once that's done, I will run the threading tap through, so we have threads all the way, and that way we can use a screw on the top to position the VinceBar. So both sides, both left and right, and I'll do this off camera. I drilled through both of the mounts, and I'm now starting to use the threading tap. So what you want to do is go from the underside. That's very important. So you want to go into the existing threads and just follow them, and you will feel that after a while there will be tougher resistance. That's where you're cutting new threads. So this threading tap is a little bit short to go through the whole thing. So I'm using just an ordinary 1/4 inch ratchet extension, and that will allow to push it in and go deeper into it. So voila, we saved a little bit of money by providing and using a standard threading tap. I've now drilled through the mounts and threaded them. Well, actually drilled through the mounts and also through the top surface here, and then threaded the mounts. So it's this one here, the left side, and the right side. Even though we can't see the top of the mounts right now, actually, let's have a look at a couple of pictures, what that looks like before the drill went through and after the drill and the threading tap went through. As mentioned previously, we will be placing the VinceBar on top of all this. We'll be using a factory front stud like this, and we want to screw it down through the hole here into the threaded mount. Now, when we drilled through the mount, we used a 10.5mm drill bit, simply because that's the minor diameter of this M12 times 1.5mm. So the down in the valley right there, that's 10.5mm, and then you cut the threads, you enlarge the hole essentially. Anyway, so we have a 10.5mm hole here. This won't go down, so I'm just going to enlarge it. You can use whatever you want. I'm going to use a 12mm drill bit and just quickly open those like that, and then show you how we proceed. Now that I've opened up this hole here, the factory front stud slides down into, and you're able to just screw it down. Now this here makes for a perfect little platform to put the VinceBar on top, and you can adjust it up and down to make it sit as tight as possible. So I'll screw those two in and go get the VinceBar, and we'll see how that works. Here's the VinceBar on top of those platforms. As you can see, it lies pretty nicely there, and again we can adjust this, so I'm moving it downwards and upwards. Why that's important is, so you see this strip here, it's going to, when finished, it's going on the back side of this, so the inside of it. Therefore you don't want to cut this too much. We will be cutting it to the level of sort of the platform inside of here, where the VinceBar will be resting. So I recommend you have a look and make sure that you centered reasonably the VinceBar onto the studs. And then what we'll do is we'll scribe along here, and we will cut we'll get back to that on the front side. So we'll scribe here and sort of down and around. And I'll cut that slightly small, and then we'll work our way up to the best dimension, the best size, in order to get the best fitment. Using this pick, I pushed it up against the bar. I actually slanted it slightly, the tip slightly inwards, and I've scribed the paint here along the surface, and then I've gone on the underside and then done the same thing over here. So this is going to be our baseline for the cut. On the front, so this piece here, this strip here, looks like that. It will sit on top of here. And really, we only need to cut for the bar itself. We don't want to cut away this area. So we don't want to cut all the way into here. We want to cut this distance from basically from that edge right there. So let me get a little bit closer. So measure this, and then you make a few marks and then draw a straight line. So you don't want to scribe along this edge. So again, don't scribe here. You take the measurement, this here, run it from there, make a few marks, scribe a line, and then cut there. Off camera, I'll do this. I removed the plastic and rubber grommets on both sides. Plastic one goes there and the rubber one right there, in order to be able to work this better. This strip here is 28 millimeters wide, roughly. My steel ruler happened to be 30 millimeter wide. So what I've done is I just put it there, up against the edge there, the step there, and I scribed a line. So this now could be a little bit too far rearward because it's 30, and it could be a little bit tight towards this surface here and the welds there. So what I'll do is when I cut this, I'll cut it on the front side, so the inside, if you will, from here, viewed from here. So because we're removing this piece here, we're keeping this piece here, and we will be clamping this together using the rivets and the epoxy on the other side to this strip here that we leave. So this needs to be, well, should I say short enough? Would that be not too deep, if I put it that way, so it will sort of collide with the bar over here. So anyway, that's a little bit of a tip if you have something, so 30 millimeter, maybe 25, 28, and then you can adjust your cut accordingly. That was a really easy way to do it. Now, so the next step is to cut this open. So follow this line here, follow that line here. This line there, the horizontal one here, is not going to be far enough downwards. I know that already because we didn't sink this all the way into the floor, or into the cavity here. But what we'll do is we'll follow this, and then we'll put this the bar down into it, and we'll remove a little bit of a time at a time to make, well, actually, you know what, I'll show you a trick that I think will be useful here. I'll make a small and simple little tool that should do the job. Before we get to that tool, we want to be cutting out this, and we need to go as close as we possibly can to the chassis rail, the chassis leg, if you will. And this is the width of the bar right there, so this width from there to there. But you can see that the end plate, it runs further backwards, so we will be cutting further downwards here, and there needs to be a slot, so a slot thick enough to get this in there confidently. which is about the width of a cutting disc, the grinder, the angle grinder. So what I'll do is I'll cut these as far as I can go with the angle grinder. The disc will sort of not get all the way in. I will cut here with the angle grinder, and then I'll probably use a Dremel to get that last part. I've done my first two cuts. So this one here, I ran slightly behind, meaning that way. So I made this a little bit shorter than the line set. As for this one, I did actually the same thing. I went kind of close to the line, described line, but a little bit that way. So that way I can sort of enlarge it to make the smallest gap as possible once the VinceBar is installed. This one here is a little bit tricky. This was coming down, so it's sort of dug in there. You want to be careful. I'm not sure if you can see that, but see if I can do this. There we go. So the inside there is really close right here. So you don't want to stick your the cutting disc too deep into there. Just go through the sheet metal and no further than that. Next up is cutting over here, which is pretty difficult because you need to get, this needs to be completely flat. This flange here, there can be nothing of that left. I will not be able to do that first time around. I'll cut this as best I can. I'll probably remove the cover and use a larger disc in order to sort of get straight down like this, up and down. I'll have to try that out. It's been a while since I did this. Oh yeah, this final piece here, as the disc hits, I'll use my Dremel right now. This is my initial cut. So what I did is, it's actually not a bad idea to come in slanted like this. It's more important to get this surface, you know, flat, if you will. I'll show you later on, without edge poking out, then saving as much as possible here, because we're going to go all the way up here, adhering to the chassis right there. And I also cut here. So what I did forget to mention is getting the VinceBar back here. So it's poking out past, see if I can do that in a reasonable way. So this is the width of the bar, which equals this. But back on the back side, we need to make room for all of this. And on the front side, there's also quite a bit there. So I'm cutting further up front and further back down, and we are going to be enlarging that as we go. Now, that side was easy. This side is a little bit more tricky because the angle grinder is it's hitting the chassis rail. So I will see if I can fit a larger disc and be really, really careful when I do this. Here's what I did. This is at your own risk. I'm not recommending it, but I removed the cover, which you should not do, and I have a larger disc, and using my really heavy, thick welding gloves, just for extra protection, I held it like that, and so I held it like that, and I cut into this and down that way. And I'm sure I'm going to need to open up this slot, even though it is quite wide. I think at the ends over there and here, I'll probably need to open it up. I need to run the Dremel just a little bit more there. And once that's done, I should be able to just remove this piece here. Here's my new invention, the tool. Before I show you how that works, I do want to say that we have a lot of really sharp edges here, burr and stuff like that. So please make sure that you just run a file on both sides, both there and here, and as well as down here, so you don't cut yourself. That would be very unnecessary. Okay, so the tool, here it is. The idea is to, let's see if I can get the light to cooperate. Yeah, so the idea is to, I'm gonna create a shadow over there. This is not working out for me. How about this? So this surface here sits flat on that surface there, and then there's a slot there to allow the cut sheet metal to come up through it, and then I made this edge here sharp. So when I do this, so I see if I can show it over here. So you make sure that that sits square, and then you push it against this surface here, and you just slide it like that. So this line there is now at the same height as this, and what we'll do is we'll put our cutting disc underneath it. So we follow the top side of the cutting disc, if we're going this way, is following the line. Therefore we know that this is going to be a little bit further down than that. So the VinceBar can sit here and still have a little bit of a gap there where the oops, see here, we have the VinceBar again. So again, you might remember the VinceBar, it sits on, so it's on its head right now, on its nose. So this surface there, no, sorry, this surface here. So there, and in front of this arced piece sits on this surface there, and this piece here goes in behind there. There's a little bit of a gap in between here. I can get my finger down there. So the small gap that we create there is going to be filled by this here. We'll see that later on. So anyway, we have a really nice scribe line that we can cut, and make sure you don't cut this too far over here, because the curvature of the edge here will want to have a little bit of a curvature there, otherwise there's going to be a gap. So we're going to do that piece by piece. Having cut off that last part, to the eye, it actually looks like, at least from this view, that this is higher than that. But you can once again use the tool, put the flat surface onto that surface, and as I tip it, you can see that I can tip it quite far before it hits the green edge. Okay, see if I can get it to focus. You can hear that sort of the tick when it hits. So it's pretty much perfect. It's right below. We will continue by flattening the T's, and I want to show you something before we do that. You should recognize this. This is a cutout of a rear axle carrier panel. So this is where we've been working now. We've opened this up. You can see the upside down T there. This is the tube. This is where the bolt goes up into this whole thing is the subframe mount. This tube here, that's where we have the threaded hole. So what we did is we had a bottom hole that went kind of probably there to that level. We drilled through that last part because it's not drilled through originally. And then we went up through the T, we have the hole there, and then up through this surface. So what we want to do now is flatten the T. And you would think that the top part here had a large base plate like the bottom part of the mount. But looking up this way, you can see it's kind of like a small mushroom only. Like there's a circular part here, and it's even cut straight there as well. So there's only a small area in the middle here we would really have something behind it. Otherwise, here it's just sort of in the air, if you will. There's no support. So meaning we can pound it down there easily. Over here, we're actually going to be bending this really flimsy plate here. So we need to be careful when we do that, and maybe sort of pound it down and then pull it up a little bit. I just wanted to take this opportunity to show you the inside here, and what we'll be doing, we'll be holding this mount here with a bolt to the subframe straight like towards us, the chassis, the really sturdy chassis rail. Anyway, so there's not a lot up here, only a thin flimsy plate. This here is the patch plate that comes with the two of these come with the VinceBar kit. As this will be sitting like that on top of the cut, so we're going to be drilling the ends, cutting slots, and then flattening that. Then we're going to be removing the paint, grinding down the MIG welds, and later on this is going to be epoxied on top of there to sort of strengthen the part that we have cut. Now, is it completely necessary? We have the VinceBar sealing on top, taking care of everything, so probably not necessary, but as we're in there, why not sort of do it correctly? So anyway, this goes here, and as you can see, the cutout there in the plate makes it so we don't have to flatten that all the way in because the VinceBar's ends there. No need. So I'm just gonna sort of make a mark there, one-handed, kind of difficult. Let's do this. So somewhere there is where we want to drill. So we want to drill there, and the ends here, then cut a slot. I used a punch to make it easier to drill at the ends there. It's going to be really hard to get into here, so what we'll do is, you bend this upwards, and then we'll bend it back when we install the VinceBar, just to be able to get in there and to be able to cut. While lifting the this lip here, I realized it's a great opportunity to show you this is the flange that we're cutting through as well. So that comes from here. It's bent outwards, of course, and this is then connected. There are some spot welds, I believe. What I'll do is I'll see if I can actually bend this and get rid of it. I'll at least bend it forward so we don't have it in the way. We don't have to cut as much. I've drilled the end holes, and I separated the this layer from that, and I'm actually going to just push it to the side later on. Did the same over there. As you can see, I lifted this quite a bit. We're just going to be pushing it down later. It's going to be easier to cut the slots. So I'm going to be using the cutting disc, and then after that I'm going to be widening the slot with a grinding disc. The slots are cut, and it actually worked out fine to widen them with the cutting disc. So I'm just going to flatten that. I flattened the tees such that the patch plates fit correctly. Ready to clean this up. We'll actually grind down the MIG welds, probably clean it up, and then remove some paint. Fold down the lid and start test fitting the bar as well as trimming stuff. But as I noticed that this episode is already quite long, I decided I'm going to move that to part 2 and probably wrap it up there. So join me in part 2. Thanks.